She was 18, broke, and desperate for a chance. When a wealthy man offered to sponsor her dreams, she thought she was saved. But his generosity came with one terrifying condition: her soul. What happens when help becomes a prison? This is the emotional true story of Grace Mitchell, and how she turned her pain into power. Before we continue, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe for more stories like this. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Grace Mitchell sat at the wooden dining table, staring at the white envelope in her hands. Her fingers trembled as she read the letter again. The bold words at the top crushed her spirit. "We regret to inform you." Tears filled her eyes. It was her final scholarship application. Rejected. She folded the letter and slid it back into the envelope with shaking hands. For a few seconds, she just sat there, frozen, trying to breathe. She didn't want to cry. Not now. But when her mother walked into the room, carrying a basket of laundry and humming a gospel tune, Grace couldn't hold it in anymore. "Mum," she whispered. Her mother, Clara Mitchell, looked up. "Yes, baby." Grace stood slowly and handed her the envelope. Her mother read it, lips tightening as her eyes moved over the words. Another rejection. Clara sat down on the worn-out couch and pressed the letter against her chest. "Oh, Grace," she said softly, her voice already cracking, "I don't know what we're going to do." "I got into the university, Mum," Grace said. "I got accepted. But I can't go. Not without the money." They had nothing left to sell. Her father had died 5 years ago, leaving behind hospital bills and a broken-down car. Clara worked 2 cleaning jobs, barely making enough to feed them and pay rent. School had always been Grace's dream. She had worked so hard, top grades, extra courses, everything. But now it felt like the dream was slipping through her fingers. "I'm sorry," Grace said, her voice barely above a whisper. "No," Clara said quickly, reaching out to hold her hand. "Don't say that. You've done nothing wrong. You've made me so proud already. I don't want to be stuck here forever, Mum. I want to make a life for us. A better one." Clara nodded, her eyes now red with tears. "I know, baby. And you will. Somehow, God will make a way." But even as she said the words, her voice shook with doubt. That evening, Clara made a quiet call to Grace's old school principal, Mr. Harper, a kind man who had always spoken highly of Grace. She asked if there was anyone who could help, just enough to cover 1 semester. The next morning, they got a call back. "Grace," Clara said, holding the phone out with cautious hope in her eyes, "someone wants to meet you." 2 days later, Grace and her mother found themselves in the office of Mr. Daniel Crow. He was in his early 40s, dressed in a sharp navy blue suit, sitting behind a polished mahogany desk. The office smelled of leather and money. Framed photos of him with governors, ministers, and smiling children hung on the wall. Daniel stood when they entered. He smiled warmly and offered his hand. "You must be Grace," he said. "I've heard a lot about you." Grace nodded shyly and shook his hand. "She's a very bright girl," Clara said, sitting nervously on the edge of the chair. "She's never brought home anything less than an A." Daniel leaned forward, his eyes resting on Grace. "And why aren't you in school yet?" "I was hoping for a scholarship," Grace said quietly. "But I didn't get any. And my mother, we can't afford the fees." Daniel nodded slowly, then turned to open a file on his desk. "Mr. Harper told me your story. You're clearly a hard-working young lady. And we need more girls like you in the university, girls who can rise up and give back to their communities." Grace watched him carefully. His words were kind. He spoke slowly, like a teacher, and smiled every now and then. But something about his voice felt rehearsed. "I run a foundation," he continued. "We help brilliant students who need support. I'd like to sponsor your education, Grace. Full tuition, books, living allowance." Clara gasped, pressing her hands to her mouth. Grace blinked. "Sir, are you serious?" "Very serious," he replied with a small laugh. But I don't do this for everyone. I pick girls with promise. Girls who'll stay focused and not waste the opportunity. Girls who understand what it means to be loyal. Grace nodded quickly. I'll work hard, I promise. I'm not worried about that, Daniel said. You seem like a smart one. But just remember, you're not alone now. If I invest in you, Grace, I expect you to respect that investment. She nodded again, a little slower this time. Yes, sir. He stood up and walked around his desk. Good. Then we have a deal. I'll have my assistant send you the documents. Welcome to your future, Grace Mitchell. As they left his office, Clara hugged Grace tightly. God has answered us, baby. Grace smiled, a mix of joy and confusion in her heart. She was going to university, but she had no idea what the real price would be. 3 weeks later, Grace stood in front of a tall gate at Livingston University, her admission letter in one hand and a brand-new suitcase in the other. Her heart thudded in her chest. The campus was big, beautiful, and busy. Students walked in groups, laughing, chatting, taking selfies. It felt like a different world. Daniel's assistant had arranged everything. Her tuition was paid. A private hostel room was secured. She had new clothes, a new phone, and even a laptop. All expenses handled. Grace wheeled her suitcase into her room and looked around. A small single bed, a desk, a window that faced a quiet courtyard. It wasn't much, but it was hers. Her first night on campus, she cried quietly. Not because she was sad, but because, for the first time in her life, she felt like she was finally becoming someone. The next few weeks passed like a dream. Grace made friends with her roommate's cousin, Lena, a confident and funny girl from Lagos who studied mass communication. They went to lectures, ate together in the campus cafeteria, and laughed late into the night. Your accent is so proper, Lena teased once. You sound like a school prefect from a British movie. And you sound like a Nollywood actress who missed her flight, Grace shot back. They burst into laughter. But Grace worked hard, too. She sat at the front of the class, answered questions, and kept her grades high. She wanted to prove to Daniel Crow, and to herself, that she was worth it. Every week, Daniel called. How are your classes going, Grace? Good, sir. I got an A in my first essay. Excellent. And what are you wearing to lectures these days? Grace hesitated. Just jeans and a blouse. Don't dress like the others. Keep yourself different. Dignified. You're not here to follow the crowd. Yes, sir. Sometimes, he sent her gifts, perfume, a watch, a fancy handbag. Once, she asked gently, Sir, you don't have to keep sending things. I'm doing fine. He replied firmly, It's not charity, Grace. It's an investment. I want you to shine. You represent me now. One evening, Daniel came to campus and asked to see her. They met at a quiet restaurant off campus. He sat across from her, studying her face like a sculptor judging his work. You've grown, he said. You look different. Grace smiled politely. Thank you, sir. He leaned closer. Have the boys started chasing you yet? She blinked, surprised. I don't talk to boys like that, sir. Good. You're not here to fall in love. You're here to build a future. He reached across the table and touched her hand gently. Don't forget who helped you get here, Grace. I pulled you out of the mud. You were going to rot in that small house with your mother. I saved you. Her smile faded. Something about his tone felt heavy, sharp. She pulled her hand away. I'm grateful, sir. I truly am. He smiled again, but it didn't reach his eyes. Good. Because gratitude is rare these days. When she returned to campus that night, Lena saw the look on her face. Was that your sponsor guy? She asked. Grace nodded. You okay? Yeah, Grace said quickly. Just tired. But as she lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, her heart felt tight. She was free. But why did it feel like she had walked into a different kind of prison? It was a Tuesday morning when Grace missed Daniel's call for the first time. She had been in a long, back-to-back lecture and left her phone in her bag on silent. When she checked it during lunch, she saw 3 missed calls and a message. "You're ignoring me now." Her heart sank. She quickly replied, "I'm so sorry, sir. I was in class." Almost immediately, her phone rang again. It was Daniel. "Pick it," Lena whispered beside her, "before your sugar daddy loses his mind." "He's not my sugar daddy," Grace muttered and stepped outside to take the call. "Hello, sir." "Grace," Daniel's voice was cold. "I called you 3 times." "I know. I'm really sorry. I was in a lecture and couldn't pick." "I don't like being ignored, Grace. Especially not by someone I've done so much for." "I didn't mean to ignore you." He sighed deeply on the other end. "I've seen this before. Girls get into school, taste a little freedom, and suddenly they forget the hand that fed them." "No, sir. That's not me. I promise." "Good. Then be more careful." Grace nodded, though he couldn't see her. "Yes, sir." After the call, she walked back into the cafeteria quietly. Lena watched her with concern. "He really talks to you like that?" Lena asked gently. He's strict," Grace said quickly. "He wants me to stay focused." Lena raised an eyebrow. That didn't sound like care. That sounded like control. But Grace didn't reply. Her head was spinning. Her chest felt tight. For the rest of the day, she couldn't concentrate. A few days later, Daniel showed up on campus again, this time unannounced. He called her and said, "I'm outside. Come down." Grace panicked. She was in sweatpants, hair uncombed, holding a plate of noodles. She rushed to change and fix herself before heading out. He was waiting in his black SUV, wearing dark sunglasses and a crisp white shirt. "Get in," he said. Grace opened the door and slipped into the seat. "You took your time," he said, not looking at her. "I had to change, sir. I wasn't dressed properly." He looked at her, eyes scanning her body. "Next time, be prepared. I might show up anytime." Grace smiled tightly. "Okay." As he drove out of campus, he began talking about her course schedule, asking about her lecturers, her friends, even her hostel roommate. "You shouldn't be too close to these girls," he said. "They'll distract you." "She's just a friend. She helps me with assignments." He frowned. "You don't need friends. You have me." The words made her stomach turn. They pulled into a quiet cafe across town. It was expensive, gold chandeliers, jazz music, waiters in black vests. Daniel ordered food for both of them without asking what she wanted. As they ate, he reached over and touched the necklace she wore. "I didn't buy you this. My mother gave it to me before I left home." He frowned slightly. "You don't need cheap things like this anymore. Let me replace it." "No, sir. I like it," Grace said, pulling it away gently. He stared at her for a moment. Then he smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Take it off. You're mine now." She blinked. "Sir." "I'm your guardian, Grace. Everything you wear, everything you do, should reflect that." Grace swallowed hard. "I appreciate everything you've done, sir. But this necklace means a lot to me. I'd prefer to keep it." For a long moment, Daniel said nothing. Then he nodded and leaned back. "You're starting to speak up. That's good. But be careful. Too much independence can be dangerous." Grace nodded slowly. That evening, as she sat alone in her room, her mind ran wild. The warning signs were no longer subtle. They were loud, clear, and chilling. The next week, Grace's course advisor called her into the office. Grace Mitchell. Yes, sir. He looked at her with a confused frown. Your sponsor has asked for you to be moved from creative writing to law. Her mouth fell open. What? He insists it's better for your future. He sent an official request. But I never agreed to that. The man shrugged. Talk to him. He seems very involved in your affairs. Grace left the office in a daze. That night, she called Daniel. Sir, I was told you requested for my course to be changed. Yes, he said casually. Literature is a hobby, not a career. You're better off studying law. But I don't want to be a lawyer. That doesn't matter. It's about what's best for your future. I thought this was my future, she said, her voice rising. There was a pause. Then Daniel's voice turned sharp. Don't forget who paid for that future. You would still be in the slums if not for me. Grace's throat tightened. She said nothing. I'm not doing this for fun, Grace. I'm doing it for you. And if you trust me, you'll obey me. She ended the call, numb. The next morning, she walked to the department office and signed a document refusing the change. She decided to fight. But the pressure was just beginning. 2 days later, Grace received a brand new phone in a parcel. Inside was a note. This is a better phone. Please use it. DC. She stared at the sleek black phone. It looked expensive. Lena picked it up and examined it. Did you ask for this? No. Lena gave her a look. Then don't use it. But what if he calls and I'm not using it? Then he gets angry again and what? Yells at you like he's your father? Girl, this man is trying to own you. Grace sighed. I'm scared to offend him, Lena. Then maybe it's time to stop letting him own you. Later that week, Daniel sent her a message. I noticed you haven't activated the phone. Disappointing. She didn't reply. An hour later, he called. She didn't pick. She knew what was coming. The next day, she received a letter from the school's finance office. Her next semester's tuition had been paused. She was no longer covered under the sponsorship fund. Her hands shook as she read the letter. He was punishing her. Grace walked back to her hostel and locked herself in the room. Tears ran down her cheeks. All the comfort, all the gifts, the money, it had all been a leash. And now that she had pulled back, he was yanking it hard. That night, she cried until her voice broke. I just wanted to go to school, she whispered into her pillow. Lena sat beside her, hugging her tight. You're not alone, Grace. We'll find a way. Even if we have to work 2 jobs. You don't belong to anyone. Grace nodded slowly, her voice still shaky. I don't want to owe anyone ever again. Lena wiped her tears. Then fight. You're not weak. And he's not God. Grace sat up, wiped her face, and breathed deeply. She was tired of being grateful. Tired of pretending she didn't see the manipulation. Tired of being afraid. If he wanted to take everything back, so be it. But he wasn't going to take her soul. The knock came late, just past 9 p.m. Grace had just returned from the library, her backpack still slung over one shoulder. When she opened the door to her hostel room, she saw the last person she ever expected to see. Daniel Crow. He stood there in a black shirt and dress pants, holding a small bag in one hand. Sir? Grace blinked. I was in town. I figured I'd stop by and see you. We need to talk, he said calmly, like it was the most normal thing in the world. I didn't know you were coming. If I had told you, you wouldn't have opened the door, he said flatly. Grace hesitated, then stepped back slightly, unsure. Can we talk in private? He asked. She glanced behind her. Lena wasn't around. Okay. But just for a few minutes. Daniel entered, taking a slow look around the small room. It's smaller than I expected, he muttered, setting the bag on her desk. You deserve better than this, Grace. She stood by the door, uncomfortable. He turned toward her. You stopped picking my calls. You refused the phone I bought you. You defied me at the department. Have I been unclear about what I expect? Sir, I'm grateful for everything you've done. But I'm not a child. You don't get to run my life. He laughed softly. Run your life? Grace, I gave you a life. Without me, you'd be nothing but a dropout in a poor neighborhood. Her chest burned. I never asked for anything more than school, she said firmly. You gave, and I said thank you. But you can't keep using that to control me. Daniel's smile disappeared. He walked toward her, slow and deliberate, until he was just a few inches from her face. I don't do charity, he said, his voice low. I do business. And now it's time for you to pay your part. Grace froze. What do you mean? You know exactly what I mean. His hand reached for her face. She stepped back so fast she almost tripped. No, she said, her voice rising. Daniel narrowed his eyes. You're acting like I'm asking for too much. I could have picked any girl. But I chose you. I made you. You don't own me, she shouted. He took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. I'll give you time, he said, to think. But just know, without me, you're finished. He grabbed the bag he had brought and stormed out. The door slammed shut behind him. Grace sank to the floor, her heart racing. Her body shook. That was it. No more doubt. No more excuses. Daniel wasn't a helper. He was a predator. The next morning, she went to the finance office and asked to speak with the bursar. I need to apply for deferred payment, she said. My sponsor has pulled out. The woman behind the desk gave her a pitying look. Grace, your records show full sponsorship. What happened? Grace forced a smile. He changed his mind. The woman nodded slowly. We'll see what we can do. Grace left the office, unsure how she would survive. She still had half a semester left, no money, and no one to turn to. But she wasn't going to Daniel. Not again. Later that night, she opened her laptop and began searching for part-time work. She applied to cafes, tutoring services, and student research jobs. She even messaged her old teacher from secondary school. Ma, is there anything I can do from here? Typing, editing, anything at all. The response came quickly. Yes, Grace, I'll send you documents to proofread. I'll pay something small weekly. Her eyes filled with tears. For the first time, she felt a tiny spark of power again. It wasn't much, but it was hers. 2 weeks passed. Grace stopped using anything Daniel gave her. She wore old clothes, skipped cafeteria meals, and borrowed textbooks. She started walking more, eating less. But each step was hers. She told Lena everything, every call, every gift, every warning. I knew it, Lena hissed. He was grooming you. Grace nodded. But I let him. I was so desperate, I ignored the signs. No, Grace, Lena said firmly. This isn't your shame. It's his. They came up with a plan. Grace saved every text, every voice note, every receipt. She went back and downloaded call logs, screenshots, emails. She created a folder on her laptop named Truth. Then something unexpected happened. While sitting in the library one day, she overheard 2 girls whispering nearby. Do you remember Tanya? That girl from 2 years ago. The one that dropped out. Yeah. Rumor was Mr. Crow was sponsoring her too. Grace's ears perked up. She turned around. Excuse me, she said gently. Did you say Tanya? The girls looked uncomfortable. Why? I think I need to talk to her. With Lena's help, Grace tracked down Tanya Evans on social media. She messaged her. Hi, Tanya. My name is Grace Mitchell. I think we have something in common. Can I talk to you, please? Tanya replied 2 days later. I know who you are. Daniel Crowe told me about you. Call me. Grace's heart pounded as she dialed the number. Tanya's voice was soft, older than Grace expected. He told me you were different. That you wouldn't be ungrateful like the rest of us. I'm not ungrateful, Grace said, her voice cracking. But I'm not a pet either. There was silence. Then Tanya sighed. He did the same thing to me. Paid my fees, dressed me up, praised me. Then one day, he told me it was time to return the favor. When I refused, he blacklisted me. No one would help me. I dropped out. Grace's chest tightened. Why didn't you say something? I tried. But no one believed me. He's too powerful. Too respected. I believe you, Grace whispered. Tanya's voice hardened. Then do what I couldn't. Expose him. That night, Grace couldn't sleep. Her mind raced. There were other girls. Maybe dozens. How many were still in his trap? She opened her laptop and stared at the folder. Truth. It was time. The next morning, she and Lena visited the journalism department. They met with a final-year student named Caleb, who ran an anonymous blog exposing corruption on campus. This is big, Caleb said, scrolling through the evidence. But it's risky. If we post this, there's no going back. Grace looked him straight in the eyes. He's already taken everything from me. I have nothing left to lose. Caleb nodded slowly. Okay. Then let's burn it all down. That weekend, the article dropped. The price of his generosity, the truth behind Daniel Crowe's sponsorships. It included voice recordings, messages, bank receipts, and the stories of 4 girls, including Tanya. The blog went viral. By Monday morning, Grace's name was everywhere. Some called her brave. Some called her a liar. But she didn't hide. She stood tall. Daniel released a statement calling it an attack by a confused girl with mental instability. But it was too late. Tanya came forward publicly. So did 2 others. Former students. Former victims. Grace was summoned by the university's disciplinary panel. But this time, she wasn't alone. She had witnesses. She had proof. And the world was watching. By the end of the month, Daniel Crowe was removed from the university board. The foundation was shut down. Investigations began. Sponsors backed out. His reputation cracked. And Grace? She got a scholarship from a women's rights organization that heard her story online. A real one. No conditions. No strings. Grace stared at her screen as hundreds of comments poured in under the blog post. She's so brave. This can't be true. Mr. Crowe is a good man. More people like her should speak up. Lies. She's just bitter. Her chest felt tight, but not from fear. From the weight of what she had started. She wasn't just a student anymore. She was the face of a fight bigger than herself. She turned to Lena, who sat beside her cross-legged on the bed, eyes wide. You okay? Lena asked softly. I don't know, Grace whispered. I thought I'd feel free. But now I just feel scared again. That's normal, Lena said. You've shaken a beast. And beasts bite back. And bite back, he did. 2 days later, someone tried to break into her room at night. Grace was lying on her bed reading when she heard the door handle rattle violently. She froze. Then she heard a male voice on the other side, low and angry. Open the door, you little liar. Grace's heart thudded. She grabbed her phone and dialed Lena. Lena! Someone's trying to get in. Please come. Within minutes, Lena came running with 2 guys from her block. By then, the intruder was gone. Grace collapsed into Lena's arms, shaking. They're trying to scare you, Lena said. But don't you dare back down. The next morning, Grace reported the incident to the school authorities. To her surprise, they tried to downplay it. It could have been a random drunk student, the hostel matron said. No, Grace replied. He knew my name. Do you have proof? The woman asked calmly. Grace's eyes narrowed. She was learning now. The system doesn't protect people like her. Not unless they are loud. Relentlessly loud. She met with Caleb again that day. Let's take it to the media, he said. We'll go beyond campus. I'm ready, she said. Together, they compiled every single detail, every recording, every statement, every voice that had been silenced before. And then, Grace did something terrifying. She posted a video. Her face. Her story. No filter. No hiding. My name is Grace Mitchell. I'm a university student. I was 18 when Daniel Crowe offered to sponsor me. I thought he was a blessing. I was wrong. She spoke clearly, calmly, but with emotion. She talked about how he used kindness as a trap. How he used money to control her. How she fought back. At the end, she said, if he's done this to you too, please don't stay silent. You're not alone. The video exploded. It was shared by influencers, women's rights activists, lawyers, and even politicians. For every hater in the comments, 10 more were cheering her on. Then, one message changed everything. My name is Adana. He did the same thing to me. I have proof. Grace gasped. Another one. Then came another. And another. Soon, there were 7. 7 girls. All with the same story. All with the same fear. All with the same scars. They met in secret, Grace, Tanya, Adana, and the others, in a quiet cafe off campus. No cameras. No press. Just their voices. He told me I was different, one girl said. He said I owed him for rescuing me, said another. He touched me while I was asleep after foundation dinner, whispered the youngest. Grace sat quietly, tears rolling down her cheeks. She wasn't alone anymore. They were an army now. And they were done being victims. 2 weeks later, the campus auditorium was full. The student union had organized an open panel, a discussion about power abuse and student safety. But everyone knew what it was really about. Grace walked to the podium slowly, head held high. She wore a plain white blouse and no makeup. Her voice shook slightly as she took the mic. My name is Grace Mitchell, she began. And I was once silent. But not anymore. Gasps filled the hall. Some students already knew. Many had only heard rumors. Now it was real. I was sponsored by Daniel Crowe, she continued. He paid for my school fees. Then he tried to own my body, my future, my voice. Murmurs. Phones were recording. Eyes were wide. She told the full story. Everything. No shame. And then she stepped aside and motioned toward the side of the stage. One by one, the other girls walked out. Tanya. Adana. 2 others. Each with tears. Each with courage. The room was silent as they stood beside Grace. The moment was historic. Unforgettable. Unforgivable. Later that day, national news picked up the story. Top Nigerian businessman accused of exploiting female students. Grace was invited to speak on a radio show. Then a podcast. Then a TV program. Everywhere she went, she shared her truth. Calmly. Without hate. Just raw honesty. Daniel Crowe's foundation collapsed within days. His bank accounts were frozen pending investigation. Sponsors withdrew. He was arrested within a week and charged with multiple counts, harassment, coercion, and abuse of power. The university was forced to make a statement. We stand with Grace Mitchell and all the brave young women who came forward. We are conducting a full review of our sponsorship programs to ensure this never happens again. But Grace wasn't done. She used the spotlight to start a movement. She worked with local NGOs to launch a campaign called Strings Are Not Free, helping girls understand when help turns into harm. She created safe spaces on campus. She pushed for policy changes. She stood in front of school boards and said, "Giving a student money doesn't mean you own her body." And people listened, because her voice was no longer alone. It was joined by thousands. Late one night, after a long interview, Grace returned to her room and sat by the window. Lena sat beside her. "You okay?" Lena asked. Grace looked up, her eyes soft but strong. "I'm more than okay," she said. "For the first time, I feel free." It was raining the morning Daniel Crowe stepped into court. Cameras flashed. Journalists shouted. He wore a gray suit, sunglasses, and a tight smile that didn't reach his eyes. But there was no hiding the fear in his posture. Grace watched the news livestream on her phone from a friend's apartment, surrounded by Tanya, Adana, and Lena. None of them spoke. They just listened as the charges were read out loud. Count 1, attempted coercion. Count 2, emotional and psychological manipulation of minors. Count 3, exploitation of power under a registered charity. Daniel pleaded not guilty, but the evidence was overwhelming. There were over 11 victims now. More than half had come forward publicly. Each had screenshots, messages, and voice recordings. Each had a story that mirrored the next. "He used the same words on all of us," one girl testified. "He called us investments. He reminded us we'd be nothing without him." Grace's testimony came on the third day. She walked to the witness stand, her palms sweating. Cameras weren't allowed in the courtroom, but reporters filled the benches. She Saturday took a breath and spoke. "I am not a victim of poverty. I'm not a helpless girl someone saved. I was a student with dreams. He used my need as a rope. He dressed it up as kindness. But it was a trap. I thank him for one thing only. He showed me how strong I really am." Silence followed. Even the judge seemed to take a pause before speaking. "You're incredibly brave, Miss Mitchell." Outside the courthouse, a group of young women waited. Some were holding signs. "We believe Grace." "My voice matters." "Help isn't ownership." Lena held Grace's hand as they passed. "You did it," she whispered. Grace shook her head. "We did it." A week later, Daniel was denied bail. The charges were upgraded to include multiple counts of abuse under trust. His face, once seen smiling beside governors and celebrities, was now blasted across the internet under headlines like, "From philanthropist to predator, the true face of Daniel Crowe." His board members resigned. His foundation shut down. His house was vandalized. And slowly, the world turned its back on the man who once believed he owned everything. Meanwhile, Grace kept moving forward. She received a letter from the university vice-chancellor. "Your tuition has been waived until graduation. We apologize for the failure of our system to protect you. We are proud to call you our student." She cried when she read it. For the first time, she belonged to herself. Months passed. Grace graduated with first-class honors in English and literary studies. The ceremony was beautiful. Her mother, Clara, sat in the front row, dabbing tears from her eyes as her daughter walked across the stage in her gown. Lena screamed from the audience, "That's my girl!" Tanya and Adana clapped wildly. As Grace took her certificate, the auditorium stood and clapped. She didn't just earn a degree. She earned a legacy. A month later, Grace was invited to speak at a national women's conference. She walked onto the stage in a navy blue dress, her natural hair in a soft bun. No heavy makeup, just her truth. The host introduced her. "Please welcome, activist, writer, and founder of the Strings Are Not Free Foundation, Miss Grace Mitchell." The audience stood. Grace stepped up to the mic, smiled, spoke. "A few years ago, I was just a girl who needed help. I didn't know how to say no. I didn't know what it meant to draw boundaries when someone held all the power. But today, I stand not as a victim, but as a woman who fought for her voice and won. To every young girl watching this, let me say this clearly: you are not a price. You are not an investment. You are not a thank you gift. You are enough. Without strings. Without conditions. You don't owe anyone your soul, not even the one who paid for your shoes. Thunderous applause filled the hall. Tears streamed down faces. And as Grace stepped off the stage, young girls rushed to hug her, shake her hand, take pictures. She smiled at them. Not from pride, but from peace. Because she had turned her pain into power. That night, as Grace sat alone in her small apartment, she pulled out her old notebook. The one she used to write in as a teenager. She flipped to the first page, where she had written once in messy, hopeful handwriting, "One day, I will be free." And with a pen in her hand, she added just 2 words under it. I am. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and share it with someone who needs courage today. And if you've ever felt trapped by someone who used help to control you, just remember, you are not a debt. You are not a gift to be owned. You are your own voice. Subscribe for more powerful stories like this one.